Eorl the Young was lord of the men of Eortheod. That land lay near the sources of Anduin, between the furthest ranges of the Misty Mountains and the northernmost parts of Mirkwood. The Eortheod had moved to those regions in the days of King Eorl II, from lands in the Vales of Anduin, between the Carrock and the Gladden, and they were in origin close akin to the Beornings and the men of the west eaves of the forest. The forefathers of Eorl claimed descent from kings of Rhovanion, whose realm lay beyond Mirkwood before the invasions of the Wain Riders, and thus they accounted themselves kinsmen of the kings of Gondor, descended from Eldakar. They loved best the plains, and delighted in horses and in all feats of horsemanship. But there were many men in the middle vales of Anduin in those days, and moreover the shadow of Dol Guldur was lengthening. When, therefore, they heard of the overthrow of the Witch King, they sought more room in the north, and drove away the remnants of the people of Angmar on the east side of the mountains. But in the days of Leod, father of Eorl, they had grown to be a numerous people, and were again somewhat straitened in the land of their home. In the 2510th year of the Third Age, a new peril threatened Gondor. A great host of wild men from the northeast swept over Rhovanion, and coming down out of the Brownlands, crossed the Anduin on rafts. At the same time, by chance or design, the Orcs, who at that time before their war with the dwarves were in great strength, made a descent from the mountains. The invaders overran Calenathan, and Cirion, steward of Gondor, sent north for help, for there had been long friendship between the men of Anduin's Vale and the people of Gondor. But in the valley of the river men were now few and scattered, and slow to render such aid as they could. At last tidings came to Eorl of the need of Gondor, and late though it seemed, he set out with a great host of riders. Thus he came to the battle of the field of Celebrant, for that was the name of the Greenland that lay between Silverlode and Limlight. There the northern army of Gondor was in peril. Defeated in the wold, and cut off from the south, it had been driven across the Limlight, and was then suddenly assailed by the Orc host that pressed it towards the Anduin. All hope was lost when, unlooked for, the riders came out of the north and broke upon the rear of the enemy. Then the fortunes of battle were reversed, and the enemy was driven with slaughter over Limlight. Eorl led his men in pursuit, and so great was the fear that went before the horsemen of the north that the invaders of the world were also thrown into panic, and the riders hunted them over the plains of Calenathan. The people of that region had become few since the plague, and most of those that remained had been slaughtered by the savage Easterlings. Cirion, therefore, in reward for his aid, gave Calenathan between Anduin and Isen to Eorl and his people, and they sent north for their wives and children and their goods and settled in that land. They named it anew the Mark of the Riders, and they called themselves the Eorlingas, but in Gondor their land was called Rohan, and its people the Rohirrim, that is, the Horse Lords. Thus Eorl became the first king of the Mark, and he chose for his dwelling a green hill before the feet of the White Mountains that were the south wall of his land. There the Rohirrim lived afterwards as free men, under their own kings and laws, but in perpetual alliance with Gondor. Many lords and warriors, and many fair and valiant women, are named in the songs of Rohan that still remember the north. Frumgar, they say, was the name of the chieftain who led his people to Eortheod. Of his son, Fram, they tell that he slew Skartha, the great dragon of Ered Mithrin, and the land had peace from the Longworms afterwards. Thus Fram won great wealth, but was at feud with the dwarves, who claimed the hoard of Skartha. Fram would not yield them a penny, and sent to them instead the teeth of Skartha made into a necklace, saying, "Jewels such as these you will not match in your treasures, for they are hard to come by." Some say that the dwarves slew Fram for this insult. There was no great love between Eortheod and the dwarves. Leod was the name of Eorl's father. He was a tamer of wild horses, for there were many at that time in the land. He captured a white foal, and it grew quickly to a horse strong and fair and proud. No man could tame it. When Leod dared to mount it, it bore him away, and at last threw him, and Leod's head struck a rock, and so he died. He was then only 42 years old, and his son was a youth of 16. Eorl vowed that he would avenge his father. He hunted long for the horse, and at last he caught sight of him, and his companions expected that he would try to come within bowshot and kill him. But when they drew near, Eorl stood up and called him in a loud voice, "Come hither, man's bane, and get a new name." To their wonder the horse looked towards Eorl, and came and stood before him, and Eorl said, "Felaroff I name you. You loved your freedom, and I do not blame you for that, but now you owe me a great weregild, and you shall surrender your freedom to me until your life's end." Then Eorl mounted him, and Felaroff submitted, and Eorl rode him home without bit or bridle, and he rode him in like fashion ever after. The horse understood all that men said, though he would allow no man but Eorl to mount him. It was upon Felaroff that Eorl rode to the field of Celebrant, for that horse proved as long-lived as men, and so were his descendants. They were the Mearas, who would bear no one but the king of the Mark or his sons until the time of Shadowfax. Men said of them that Bema, whom the elder called Orome, must have brought their sire from west over sea.